Okay, sorry about that. We had a misfire with weather school today. That was weird. We had a system crash right when we were about to go to weather school. So I deeply apologize for that. As I was saying, today's weather school is going to be on the four spheres on planet Earth, a really important part of Earth sciences that we're continuing from yesterday's earthquakes and volcanoes. And meteorologist Chris Mulcahy is going to talk about that today. That was weird. We've had maybe two misfires in 50 some episodes now. So it was bound to happen today at one point, but it just literally froze up the minute we were going to start. So today we'll try to get this going again as we start weather school for May 27th, 2020. I know it's the end of the school year when stuff like this starts happening. So take it away, Chris.
Hey there everyone, I'm meteorologist Chris Mulcahy, and today we're talking about the four spheres of planet Earth. So the four spheres that make up our wonderful blue planet is number 1, the Hydrosphere, number 2, the Geosphere, number 3, the Atmosphere, and number 4, the Biosphere. We're going to learn about what all four mean, how they're all interconnected in today's weather school. Okay, let's waste no time. Let's start off with sphere number 1. Personally, my favorite sphere, the atmosphere. And there it is. It's gorgeous. Where all of our weather happens, where the ozone layer is. Thousands and thousands of feet up, just above where I'm standing right now, stretches our atmosphere. But where you see all these clouds is just a piece of the atmosphere. Did you know that the atmosphere is divided up into 4 layers? All right, quickly, here are the 4 layers of the atmosphere. We have the troposphere, the stratosphere, the mesosphere, and the thermosphere. So the troposphere is the lowest layer, and that extends anywhere from 4 to 12 miles up in the atmosphere, depending on the season and where you are across the globe. Almost all weather occurs within this layer, and it's especially warm at the surface where we live, and then as you go up with height, that's where it gets a whole lot colder, because the higher up you go, the colder it gets, where the higher altitudes also have less pressure. And that's one thing that happens through our atmosphere. The further you go up, well, the less pressure that there is, where 75 to 80% of the mass of the atmosphere is right here in the troposphere. The dividing line is called the tropopause, and then next we're in the stratosphere. The stratosphere is most famous for the ozone layer. The ozone layer, that is where we have this thin layer around the Earth that traps a lot of the UV lights. And if you look at this red line here in this chart, you notice that it starts to go up. That's because all that UV light is trapped here by the ozone layer and allows it to heat up. The next layer, the mesosphere, check this out. We're heading the opposite direction. This is where we start to achieve some of the coldest temperatures in our atmosphere, getting down to about 130 degrees below zero. Now, we don't have a lot to mention here in the mesosphere. You might be able to see where some of the meteors are. The accessibility here is The accessibility is very difficult, so we haven't really explored this region all that much, and not a lot of this really affects our day-to-day weather. Lastly, we have the thermosphere, and the thermosphere is where things warm on up. It is that 4th layer that absorbs all of that shortwave high energy that comes from the radiation of the oxygen and the nitrogen that is within the sun. So temperatures rise to extremely high values, more than about 1,000 degrees centigrade or about 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit in the thermosphere. But these temperatures are not comparable to those experienced on Earth's surface, because temperature is defined in terms of about how fast those molecules move. Because the gases of the thermosphere are moving at a very high speed, the temperature is very high. But the gases are so sparse and collectively that you wouldn't really be burned even if you're in 1,000 degree temperatures at this light. Quiz. What is the number 1 element in the air that we breathe? Do, 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 do. Time's up. If you said nitrogen, you were correct. Johnny, tell them what they won. Yeah, pretty crazy. Even though we breathe oxygen, most of our air is made up of nitrogen, just over 78%. Oxygen is close to about 21%, even though the exact number is 20.946% of the atmosphere. And number 3, you probably haven't heard of this. This is argon. Argon making up roughly just below 1% of our atmosphere. But the number 4, this one's a huge one. Carbon dioxide coming in at 0.038%. Now that doesn't seem all that high, but Carbon dioxide is significant because it's a great efficient absorber of energy emitted by the earth, and it just absorbs everything. So that's the reason why this is such a big player whenever we're talking about global warming, just because the more CO2 that's in the atmosphere, the warmer the atmosphere is going to become. And we have seen scientific evidence that this number has been going up. All right, let's move along onto the hydrosphere. So we spent a little bit extra time in the atmosphere because this is weather school, but the hydrosphere is just as important for our daily weather because the hydrosphere is pretty much everything water. And our planet is known as the blue planet because 71% of our planet is actually water, blanketed with water, and most of that water is actually from our oceans. And did you know 97.2% of our water in the hydrosphere, or just water on our planet, is in the oceans? Most of that's salt water. So if you break down the amount of fresh water that we have, a lot of that's frozen into glaciers. So there's a very small percentage of fresh water. So when we're talking about the hydrosphere, things that are part of the hydrosphere are even the water vapor that's in the air, rivers, ice caps, streams, lakes, and oceans. They're all interconnected as part of the hydrosphere. So the hydrosphere also includes the fresh water from the clouds. So that means the water cycle is a part of this. So the main three aspects of the water cycle are 1, evaporation, 2, condensation, and 3, precipitation. So check this out. So here's the hydraulic cycle, and this is just one of Earth's many subsystems. Our planet's water is constantly cycled up, down, and comes back around, and it starts with evaporation. So evaporation can come from lakes and streams. As the sun is heating up that water, it rises up. It's a gas at that point, but eventually it's going to condense, and that's what our clouds are. It's just condensation, as we've learned in previous weather schools. But eventually that condensation, that cloud gets way too heavy, and eventually the water has to come back down. And that water can either come back down as snow or it can come back down as rain. When it comes back down as rain, it quickly is going to usually wash through the ground, sometimes run off into more streams and creeks. Sometimes it can go back down into the water table. But then other times, if it falls as snow on top of the mountains, well, that eventually could be melting ice, melting snow that comes down, and then along the streams and rivers, especially during the springtime, it all continues to repeat itself. So this is the water cycle and also the hydrosphere. So pretty much everything water is sphere number 2, the hydrosphere. Now on to sphere number 3. Let's talk about the geosphere. Geosphere is pretty much just rocks, minerals, anything that's the ground, and just planet Earth itself. So lying beneath the atmosphere and below our oceans is the geosphere. And the geosphere is also the ocean floor itself, the rocks, the sand, everything there. And you wouldn't think about how deep our actual Earth is. The geosphere, which is pretty much the rock of planet Earth, extends from the surface to the center of the planet, which is about 4,000 miles, making the geosphere the largest of the 4 spheres that we're talking about. So based on compositional differences, the geosphere is divided into 3 principal regions. There's the core, there's the mantle, and then there's the crust. The core is broken down into 2 parts. You have the inner core and the outer core, and the inner core is actually roughly about the size of the moon. Then you have the outer core, and all this is super hot, just liquid magma, molten rock that is very slowly circulating beneath our feet. You have the mantle, which is the main reason why that we have any plate tectonics and movement that goes along. Brad talked about this yesterday in his earthquakes weather school. But then on top of that is the crust. So I'm not going to go too much further because Brad talked a lot about this yesterday. But sphere number 3 is the geosphere. And the last sphere that we're talking about today is the biosphere, which is pretty much life itself. You are a part of the biosphere. If you have a dog and an animal, they're technically part of the biosphere. The grass growing in your backyard, any zone of life is part of the biosphere, and that can live in our oceans, live in the air. Tiny microbes are all a part of this. But that is all life. Ocean life, as I was mentioning, also tree roots, burrowing animals, well down into the ground, all a part of the biosphere itself. And this is the last thing that is really survived by the hydrosphere and the atmosphere itself. So it's the atmosphere that is able to eventually rise up these clouds with water vapor, and eventually it rains, it replenishes life. And as the plants go, they emit oxygen that feeds the atmosphere, and then we breathe in that oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide is consumed by the plants. So as you can see, each sphere is connected in some other way. And that's what makes life on planet Earth so special. It's the water, it's the earth, it's the life, it's the atmosphere that come together to make this truly a beautiful and breathtaking planet. It's amazing how time flies. Before I end this episode of Weather School, this is going to be my last one because we're ending things this week. I want to say thank you for all of those that have been watching these. It's bittersweet that everything's coming down to an end, but that means summer is about to kick into high gear. So hopefully you learned something in this week's Weather School and all of my previous Weather Schools. Again, thank you so much for watching, and make it a great day.
Thanks, Chris. Sorry for the misfire that we had at the beginning of that. I told you it was the first time we ever had this. So also want to note for everybody watching, still watching, please stay tuned to my Facebook page, my YouTube page, as well as WCNC.com. We're going to stream the first crewed or manned launch since 2011. SpaceX Dragon is going to launch today. It's supposed to launch around 4:33. That's the launch window. But there is some rain and showers. I give it about a 40% chance of seeing a of the mission, but really cool. The first mission that we've seen with actually humans on board out of the U.S. since 2011, the last shuttle mission. And these are actually two shuttle veterans that will be on the spacecraft today. So that should be a really cool launch and exciting to see for everybody who loves space, and especially some of the launches I used to watch as a kid, watching the shuttle go up. Now we get to watch SpaceX launch the Dragon into orbit today, and it's going to dock with the space station, and they will be up there for. That'll be coming up today, probably around 4 o'clock. We'll start the stream, so be looking in for that as well on all our social media accounts, as well as Weather School tomorrow and Friday. Last two Weather Schools of the school year coming up right here at WCNC. If you missed any of the previous episodes, as we mentioned before, you could always go back to our YouTube channel, WCNC's YouTube channel. We've got a playlist with all the previous ones on there. We'll kind of kick out the one that got messed up this morning, and we'll also have 57 of them now, I think, going back to March. So you can always check them out. Go to WCNC.com or our YouTube channel, WCNC's YouTube channel. We've got a playlist with all their weather schools. Have a great day. Try to get some outdoor activity in after the rain moves out. Not a great day with our tropical system moving off to the east, but we will see better weather ahead.